Liao. Am I saying it right? Jimmy Liao, is that right?
Yes, Liao, like
Liao.
meow, cat.
Okay, got it. Liao.
Okay.
Liao.
Lion.
I want to get it right.
Great to
Our
be on
names
with
are
you guys,
important.
Chris and Jeff.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so
What
good.
Thank you so
hours
much for
is for
joining
you guys
us.
now? My pleasure.
We started at 9 a.m. So we're
10 hours
we're
in.
an hour 10.
Yeah.
Wow. So are you guys actually going like the 24 hours, like no sleep kind
Yeah.
of thing?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's
Yeah. Don't advise
Yeah, I
us
had
of
to
the
do-
negative things that body does.
No, it's not fun. I had to do a lot of these 30 to
Resident-
36 hour
yeah.
shifts in medical school residency.
I was gonna say.
Wow. Rough. By the 18-hour mark, it's like you're not feeling good. You're feeling pretty irritable.
I think the hardest part
So
about
it's-
this is the being planted on my ass for all this time. I need to get up and get my legs
Yeah.
moving. I'm getting really
Stretch it
antsy,
out.
but I'll have this cup of coffee.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you. We're gonna actually play a video. It's a replay from last year of my cousin who lost her son to cancer. But it's really like provoking and really helps people understand kind of what some of the emotional drive behind doing this is every year, and kind of gives people a feel for what the effect of some of this is. So while that plays, I'll actually get up and I'll actually go outside and run
We'll walk
around the
a little
house
bit at
and
that
then get
point.
back
Go
in.
get some food. Yeah.
So, Dr. Liao,
idea.
I am so excited to have you on. We've been talking about this all day, and we're really excited about it because you can give us so much insight from a place of knowledge and knowledge that, you know, there's so many people that speculate about this stuff that are, I did my own research kind of people. I read it on the internet once, kind of a thing, and you bring a lot to this. So I want to start, kind of just share with us your journey to, I'll say it this way because I say it to myself, to doctoring, right? How did you get to where you are, and what was your journey to get to what you do today?
Well, I grew up in Michigan, in Bad Axe, Michigan. Huge Lions fan growing up. I saw that you guys had Herman Moore earlier.
Yeah.
He's a big part of my childhood. Love that guy. And I actually went through my old card collection and found these two babies.
Oh, wow.
Rookie cards for Herman Moore. Look at this guy.
That's
Action-packed Herman Moore rookie card. It's got like 3D embossing.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
And I got a upper deck card. So Herman Moore was a big part of my childhood. So that's awesome that you guys had him on earlier. That's fantastic. So yeah, I went to University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia for undergrad and did a psych major there. Then went to U of M, Michigan for medical school. And after that, did residency out here in Washington State. That's where I am still right now. But I've been following the Lions decades as well as the NFL. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, so I don't have intimate knowledge about the surgeries and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I love following the injuries, love trying to figure out what's going on, try to deduce. And just as a fan, it's so important to try to understand what's going on with our guys. When are they going to be back? What's the deal with these guys? So that's my journey up till now.
That's great. It's a fun but difficult journey. I was just talking before we had John, my son, he's a sophomore at Florida Gators. And he's on a pre-med track, and we all recognize, right, what's going on. He's doing a double major in biology and cognitive psych. And then he wants to go on and do the MD track. But we both know, you know, to get to medical school from here is a long road, right? It's a tough journey. So we'll see how it works out. If somebody can do it, it's him. He's really inspirational to me. He's way smarter now. He may be more wise now than I am at this point. he's a bright kid. So it's really something to see. I want to start out talking about James Houston and his injury. We've talked about him a lot today. The broken ankle, right? This is something they're talking about. Hey, he's ready to come back. And we were just talking about this a little bit with Russ. I'm like, what? So first off, what does the break mean? What does the rehab look like? And when they say he's ready to come back after 8 weeks, what does comeback mean? Because and the thing I use as an example is, I get a cast off my arm, and man, is that thing skinny. Like, I don't think I could go throwing a baseball. I don't think I could play tennis at that point, right? So help me understand, when they say he's ready to come back, does that mean with rehab, like he can play, put pressure, cut, all that kind of thing? Walk us through what we've got here with James Houston.
Yeah, I think 8 weeks is not really in the realm of possibility. So let's start at the beginning here. September 17th was his injury. If you watch the video of it, he gets blasted, head-on collision on a kickoff. Just a really brutal collision. It's like he ran into a brick wall, except the brick wall also has legs and was running at him. So he got bent over. His ankle gets trapped in a high ankle spring mechanism and totally gets bent over, can't get his ankle out. Now, a severe high ankle sprain can certainly cause a fibula fracture, which is reportedly, I believe, what he had. So what we're dealing with is, at the minimum, a severe high ankle sprain, and then you tack on a fracture on top of that. So I looked back in some other players who have had similar looking injuries in the past with a fracture. You look at Dak Prescott, who had a famous one in 2020, ankle dislocation, fracture. Dak Prescott was out 4 to 6 months. Dak Prescott's injury was a little bit more serious because it was an open fracture, which means the bone punctured through the skin, which can introduce complications of infection, makes it more difficult to come back from. Other people, Drake London in 2021 at USC had a similar fracture. He was out for over 4 months. Jalen Waddle in 2021, similar fracture. He returned in 11 weeks for the national championship game, but he was very hobbled. And I don't know if you guys remember, he was limping around the whole game. He probably shouldn't have been playing. Yeah. He probably came back just because it was the national championship. So if we're comparing to similar fractures in the past, similar mechanisms of injury, we're really looking at probably 3 months at a best case scenario, and good chance this is 4 months or longer. So 3 months would be mid-December. And yeah, that would be mid-December at a very optimistic scenario. And if you listen to Dan Campbell's presser on Halloween, he talked about it a little bit. His quote was, "If it's happening, we're talking about December."
Yeah.
That doesn't sound too optimistic. Now, we have to take everything coaches say with a grain of salt, of course, but Dan Campbell's pretty straightforward about things, and he may not be that open about everything that's going on, but he's pretty straightforward. So doesn't sound all that optimistic about December. And if he does come back, it might be late December or possibly the playoffs for James Houston. So hope I'm wrong. Hopefully we hear some stuff.
Yeah. And then you're dealing with, like, he hasn't been able to be in football shape either. And that's just the mechanism of the injury and coming back from that too. It's kind of discouraging, but absolutely, it is what it is, man. So
yeah, like Chris said, you're right. A lot of it is rehab too. And with James Houston, he's a special case because his value to the team, his superpower is bending the corner and getting the quarterback. In order to do that, he's going to need full-on ankle flexion and torque. So he's not an offensive lineman like we saw Taylor Decker and Jonah Jackson this year with high ankle sprains. Those guys can come back a little bit easier because offensive linemen, they don't have to do that kind of stuff with their ankle. They can tape it up and get out there. But for James Houston to be back doing what he can do for the team, he's going to have to be close to full strength of that ankle. So it's going to take him a little bit longer than, say, another position or another player.
Right. So realistically, do you think playoff return, or do you think that it's going to be hey, let's just work it. We'll see you in training camp and OTCs and we'll go from there?
I think there's a chance for a playoff return. That would be the optimistic view. I'm crossing my fingers for that. There's also a good chance we don't see him until the offseason.
And then for healing, and rehab and that kind of work, these guys are in such great shape as athletes. I mean, the comparison for a guy at my age and my fitness level and their age and their fitness level, the rehab and the repair work is going to be completely different. I imagine they're getting, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they're not getting popped full of things like denosumab or any other stuff that's out there. But there may be, there's bone healing drugs out there for other reasons. But what are they, is there an accelerant just because of their athleticism or their age that may help him kind of bend that curve to his favor?
Yeah, I think there is. I think these guys do somehow come back a lot faster than the general population. Whether it's, I don't know exactly what it is. I think part of it is their athleticism and their fitness before the injury, as well as their youth, as well as they're getting just around the clock care and monitoring and observation. So they can come back sooner than the rest of us.
Got it.
So high ankle sprains. I attempted to explain the mechanism of it before, and correct me if I'm wrong, please do, because my experience of this is just that I've suffered them. Is the tibia and the fibula coming apart at the bottom, right? And that's what Jonah Jackson is dealing with now. And that's an injury that rest fixes more than anything else, right?
Yeah, you need to rest that. And it's not necessarily just at the bottom. If it's a severe one, it can go all the way up. A very severe one causes what's called a Mason-New fracture, which is a proximal fracture of the fibula. That stress is so strong that it actually starts pulling things up at the top of your leg as well. So it can be an ugly injury because there's just so many things that are holding the tibia and fibula together.
Maybe I'll just walk around the house instead of running. Get my quick break. my ankles hurt.
We don't want you getting hurt.
Yeah. So with Jonah, he's been out for this would be the 4th week that he would be out.
He missed 3 games so far.
Yeah, and so we've got the bye week this week. Is it reasonable to expect him to be back for the Chargers game?
Yeah, absolutely. Based on what we've seen this year with Taylor Decker, who had a similar looking high ankle fracture back all the way in game 1 against the Chiefs, he missed 2 games, came back maybe a little bit early because it was a Thursday night game against the Packers. He really wanted to be there for that. We saw Brian Branch with a mild high ankle sprain as well. He missed 2 games and he was back. I think Jonah Jackson on video looked very similar to Taylor Decker's injury. So again, everybody's different and every injury is different, but based on what I see, yeah, he could absolutely be available for the Chargers game. A lot of it also depends on our depth and how all the other guys are playing too, as well as something to consider is we have a very good chance to be in the playoffs this year. Vegas odds have us at 93% chance to win the division. Yeah. So much higher than that even to get the playoffs because we got a wild card spot even if we don't win the division. So do we want to rest these guys an extra week or two, make sure that they are good for the playoffs? That's something that the Lions are probably thinking about and really considering when it comes to all these injured guys.
And I think
we haven't had to deal with for a while.
Well, I think there's something.
Yeah, it's a new situation for all these guys.
There's something,
including us as fans,
with the Lions, and going back to Tyrell Crosby, right? And I don't want to get into the nuances of everything, but he walked out and he said basically the Lions didn't care about his injury; they just wanted him to play. Whatever the reality is there, that's one person's story. That's fine. I'm not going to dispute or acknowledge that it's true. I'm just going to say that's what was said. As an organization, this organization is taking a different pivot from a lot, if not everything, that the old organization did, except they still play the same sport. It seems like mostly they do everything different. I know a case of one player who was cleared to play, and the coaches said, nope, you're not playing. You're not moving laterally the way we need you to, so we're keeping you out of the game, even though the trainers have said it's okay. And then with JMO, they gave him at the end of the season. He didn't see a lot of time on the field again last season when he should have been healed. It feels like he really could have easily seen the field, but they were really gentle, kind of rolling him back, giving him a couple of here's and there's, and that's it. This cautiousness of the team obviously bodes well for these guys to heal better. It probably makes the players a lot more trusting of the front office and the staff as well. But it really now, as you said, as you head towards this opportunity to show up in the playoffs, gives guys a chance. Everybody's dinged up, everybody's bruised, but these guys maybe are dinged up and bruised a little less because their coaches and their staff gave them a little bit extra time to heal. Value in that?
Yeah, I do like what they're doing with getting guys back in slowly. Back to what you said about Tyrell Crosby and also to some extent DeAndre Levy, who also complained about the medical. It makes me cringe when I hear these kind of things because the doctors are not allowed to say their side of the story. So it's just a one-sided story you're getting from the player. And as a doctor, I know a lot of times there's a reason a doctor did something. The doctor did something or said something for a reason. It has an opinion for a reason. And for the doctors not be able to comment at all is really unfair to the medical staff for the Lions. But I do like what they're doing, getting guys in slowly. Like you said with JMO last year, just working them real slow. I expect to see the same thing with David Montgomery Demo when he likely comes back against the Chargers. I'm not expecting a whole lot of carries from him coming back from this rib strain. He can play with the rib strain, but those things aren't totally healed for weeks. So the smart thing and something I expect the Lions to do is to just work him way back gradually. Just give him a few touches the first couple games, especially with Gibbs and Reynolds playing so well.
And you gotta feel like, with Gibbs playing the way he is, that they feel like they can take the time. That Raiders game really bought them. And the thing is, with no practice, like with actual rest time for people, that's got to help Montgomery get better quicker as well. Good question here from Jeff Merrill, and I appreciate that he writes out the acronym before he uses it. Deliberate cold exposure has shown to accelerate the immune system. Has there been any research that you know of on DCE and bone healing?
Not that I know of. I'm not on top of all these studies at this point. One thing I do have to say in general with all these kind of things is it's almost impossible to do a good research study when it comes to sports medicine. So there's a lot of snake oil out there. There's a lot of questionable stuff. I mean, we've seen it all over the years with, like, we've seen Taylor Decker get his cupping. We've seen his cupping type bruising scars. We've seen some guys are wearing these like neck things around their neck these days. A few years ago, there was this company trying to get started with these mouth guards that would help prevent concussions. Haven't heard about that because it probably doesn't work. So there's a lot of people trying to find ways to accelerate healing, but to actually do a study that can prove that is almost impossible to do. It's very difficult.
There's a lot of people trying to make money, and then also followed by the rest of that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And you're right. I hadn't thought about it. The sample size and the ability to get a good sample of people to run proper studies on is almost impossible. How many football players can you test your mouth guard on and actually have like a concussion situation that you can say data, data for, data against, whatever. I mean, that I had never thought about trying to create a valid sample on sports medicine, but man.
Yeah, and to do some of these studies, you'd actually have to try to cause the injury. Like, we're going to hit you on the head really hard and see if you get a concussion. These studies are not ethical to do. So we have to do these studies in other ways that just, it's hard to get a valid result out of them.
You have to do them in Russia. No, I'm not advocating this. I am advocating ethical research, people. Please, it was a joke. Do not take that seriously. I want to ask about cjgj and his pack. This is one that, boy, what a valuable guy he would be to have on the field. You don't want to rush a guy back, of course. You don't want him to get hurt, make it worse, make it, even more so. I remember was it Spielman that had a torn pec as well at one point? I'm trying to remember back in the day.
Did he? I don't remember.
But
I don't remember.
cjgj seems to be on social media pretty certain that he's going to be back sooner than people thought. Can you talk about that injury? what it means, what a prognosis looks like for that, and then even what rehab looks like to be able to get this guy back on the field.
All right. So cjgj, or maybe CD Deuce, I don't know what he's officially called right now, but he hurt himself also in the Seahawks game on September 17th. That was not a fun game in many ways.
Yeah.
He finished the entire game with that torn pec, which is great. But so I looked back at a couple of recent examples of pec tears. Both Watt brothers had a pec tear fairly recently. TJ Watt tore his in 2022. He ended up not getting surgery. He returned in 2 months. JJ Watt tore his in 2019. He did have surgery. He returned in about 9 weeks, so a little bit more than 2 months for the playoffs. And maybe he came back a little bit sooner because it was the playoffs. So typically in the past, pec tears were 4 to 6 months. You're done for the season type thing. But with whatever they're doing now with the surgeries, players seem to have a chance to come back a little bit sooner. So if he can come back at around the 10-week mark or so, we're talking about end of November, early December, I think is a possibility for CJ.
Wow. And so what do you think, again, from a rehab kind of situation, is it something that, and then knowing we know about the Lions, right? Because you got your football head going too, so it's kind of it's a good kind of combo. And the way the Lions run, is it something they wait? Okay, he's ready at the beginning of December. Cool. Let's just run some practices. Let's go late December before he sees a little bit of game time. And then hopefully that last game against Minnesota, we get him a full game, up to speed, get all the rust knocked off, and the playoffs. I mean, is that kind of the ideal arc for him to really ensure he doesn't re-injure that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with Tracy Walker playing so well. I don't even know if CJ is going to take over a starting position at all this season with Tracy Walker there.
Shots fired.
I mean, Jeff, maybe you can give us your opinion on that. But
I don't hate the way Tracy's playing at all. So yeah, there's no reason to rush him back would be the long and the short of it.
Yeah. So as far as how soon they'll throw him back on the field, his injury is going to be a little bit different than James Houston, who we talked about. He needs his ankle, whereas CJ literally played the entire game with the torn pec. So cornerback safeties, yes, they need their pec, but it's not like they can still run around. They can still cover guys. So he might be able to come back a little bit sooner in the rehab process than James Houston.
Yeah. Wow.
That would be great. Just to get the emotional lift from him coming back. Yeah. So one of the things that we were talking about this morning was, and I forget who asked it or who we were talking with even. The day blurs as it goes on. There's been it seems like we're not getting as many Lisfranc injuries as in the past, and that's a very debilitating injury. And one of the things that I've seen at our local high school, actually, they gave a couple of kids who were vulnerable to it or who had them shoe inserts. Do you know anything about like the types of prophylactic sort of measures to go through these things? Like what can you do? I know that the offensive linemen who wear the knee braces on both knees, even though they've never had any issues with it.
Right.
What's your thought on that sort of type of action?
Yeah, a Lisfranc is a midfoot sprain. So yeah, possibly, I guess if you could really lock in the foot, that could help. But you're also taking away somebody's athleticism when they do that. So we saw Amir Abdullah with a Lisfranc with the Lions, and going way back, Kevin Jones. I don't know if you guys remember. He had a Lisfranc.
Oh yeah,
wasn't that Mikel Shore had one too? Was that what
he did? Achilles.
Had an Achilles.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. It was
Achilles.
Yep. I'll stop talking. It was.
Yes. So, the Lisfranc. This is again where it's hard to do a valid study. Like you said, Jeff, these Lisfrancs, they're not super common injuries. It's not like guys are going down once or twice a game with them. So you're trying to prevent something that only happens rarely. How do you prove that a certain insert is going to prevent something that's a rare occurrence.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that angle up. I know what the other part of this conversation was it seems like there's been a rise in, and this is just, observational. I don't know if the data is true on it or not. Like, there's been more Achilles injuries lately and maybe a little bit less of the ACL injuries. And my thought, and it's just a thought, you can tell me if I'm crazy, I won't be offended, is that maybe in the trying to prevent in the training and conditioning and strength training, that we're somehow like making the Achilles more vulnerable by focusing on the knee. Does that make any sense at all?
It's possible. The Achilles tear is caused by the calf muscle just overpowering that tendon. So maybe these guys are doing a lot of calf lifts, just really trying to strengthen up that calf, and it's showing up as Achilles tears. That's a possibility.
Yeah. Again, it just seems that way, and that sort of makes sense to me. I don't know, because I know, like, my children are athletes, and one of the things that they do is that they play basketball and volleyball, and it's like you try to strengthen the knee joint, so you're doing things to strengthen your quad and your calf and your hamstring and your lateral range and even up into your hips. And I wonder if like the heel gets neglected because of that almost.
Well, the problem with tendons and ligaments is you can't really strengthen them. So you can strengthen muscle, but tendons and ligaments, you can't really strengthen them. So these athletes who are so strong and so wound up tight with these quick twitch muscles, these guys just tear their ACLs and tendons just way easier than the rest of us.
Yeah. And that's
now someday, if we can find a way to strengthen tendons and ligaments, that'd be great. But I don't think we're anywhere close to that yet.
Well, that's one of the things that I often gets asked and talked about is with these athletes and the absolute strength that they have. At some point, you can say, okay, balancing the right muscles that operate against each other may help support some of these tendons, but at some point, it's just going to overpower. Like that's the weak point at this point, and they're just not powerful enough to hold together with all of the rest of what's going on. That's why a guy like Aleem McNeil, and I think this is, you can tell me if I'm wrong. This is pure speculation now. A guy like Aleem McNeil is just built bigger. His tendons are bigger. His bones are bigger. He's just a bigger human being. Things are all bigger on him. So him losing that weight actually puts him in a better position, because then he's not putting as much stress on those tendons, and he can get more muscle mass on that body and do more work without risking that. I mean, that's kind of the calculus in my head on how it worked. Does that make sense from a medical perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And the more weight you have, the more force you're putting on all those joints and tendons. That'll certainly help with things like meniscus or articular cartilage issues, where it's just the pounding of the joint. That's really where the weight helps. Whether it helps or not with stuff like ACLs or Achilles, that's harder to say. I mean, we see guys, skinny guys like Emmanuel Mosley tear his ACL on just a nothing play. We see Tracy Walker, skinny, lean dude. He just pops his ACL last year. Jeff Okuda ACL. So skinny guys tear their ACLs all the time too. So it's hard to say how much weight has to do with all of this.
But they're built smaller. This is me, like, again, pure speculation, but like Aleem McNeil, everything is thicker on this guy, right? Like a skinny guy, and I'm just thinking naturally, like their bones are typically a little bit thinner. Their structure top to bottom tends to be thinner. I would assume the connective tissue and so on is smaller, just relatively, because that's how they're built.
Right.
Again, to me, the calculus makes sense. I don't know if medically it does.
That's a good theory. That's as good a theory as any.
It's why I worried about like Devontae Smith coming out. I mean, his legs were like toothpicks. Great wide receiver, right?
Skinny.
Yeah, but I was like, God, I can't imagine how this guy's going to hold up in the NFL.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be a problem.
Yeah,
but,
he's he's not like JMO. I mean, JMO's just so lean and skinny and tall. He's way taller than you expect.
Yeah.
So,
yes, he is.
JMO's torn ACL. So hopefully JMO can stay healthy the rest of his career.
Yeah, Stephen Gilmore's like that too. Our undrafted rookie corners. He's 6 feet tall and 168 pounds soaking wet. That's tough to survive collisions that way.
Yeah,
Right.
One of the other injuries that I wanted to ask you about, and this is more for the draftnik in me, but I'm going to talk about Michael Penix Jr. You probably know him because you're out in Washington. Know who he is? Washington quarterback has torn his left ACL twice and has had AC joint shoulder injuries in both shoulders. How, obviously without knowing his chart or anything, how scared should you be that there's a chance for re-injury, that he's just injury prone on that sort of thing? And I know it's difficult. You'll have to generalize a little bit, but like I'm very worried that I can't draft him because of that, even without seeing his medicals. Like, is how much concern would that be for you? Like, oh man, this guy's good chance to get injured again.
I'm with you, Jeff. I'd be highly concerned as well. Now there's varying opinions on this. Some doctors will say one ACL doesn't mean you're going to tear the other ACL. Injury prone is not a real thing. I'm not sure I'm in that camp. I think I'm in the camp where this guy, if he's had 2 ACLs in the same knee, a couple of AC joint sprains, there is either something wrong with his body, his ligaments just can't handle the stresses, or number 2, there's something about the way he plays. He can't get himself out of trouble. He doesn't fall the correct way. We saw this with Tua Tagovailoa last year. Keep falling the wrong way, getting concussions all the time. Then he did a bunch of judo training or something over the summer to try to learn to fall the proper way. So there is something to being able to avoid injuries, seeing when a defender is coming and getting your legs up so they don't get planted in the turf. There's something to that. The third possibility is he's very, very unlucky. So hopefully it's just the third possibility, but there's a decent chance it's one of the first 2 possibilities. So I'm with you there, Jeff. I would definitely put that as a red flag.
I will. This is going to be a shout out to Fab in the Slack, but I'm approaching this from a construction perspective. If you use cheap steel to build a building, the building's not going to be as strong, and versus regular good strong steel. People's bodies are built differently. I think there's one factor that the same size people side by side are going to be weaker in different places, just even if they're otherwise identical, the same, lifestyle and everything else, from top to bottom. They're just built differently. And then how they play, as you said, takes into effect. I think there is such a thing as injury prone. One person might, I'm making this up again, might just have smaller tendons in their body. That's maybe just how they develop for whatever reason, right? I'm not going to get into anything about like prenatal nutrition or anything like that, but there could just be a reason why something like that happens. And that's kind of one of the things that differentiates these athletes that play so well, so strong, and then are Hall of Fame tier and play without injury. They just are constructed physically different, and then have all that talent on top of it. And it's a combination of so many things, some luck of the draw, some sheer will and force of nature that make those absolute top elite athletes. And I think just some people are injury prone. I just think that's just how they're built, and it's too bad. And again, some of it's how they play. So I think all of those things are potential, results that you see in a player's career.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think people's ligaments and tendons have different strengths. It'd be great if there was a way to measure it, but you can get an MRI. It's not going to tell you the strength of a ligament. It'll tell you if your ACL is torn or not torn, but it doesn't tell you how prone you are to tearing it in the future. Yeah, you see guys like Barry Sanders. He didn't have any major injuries his whole career. It's just, now that you think about it, the way we see running backs just go down all the time these days, it's almost a miracle that he was able to get through his whole career without any kind of major injuries.
And his thighs were gigantic. Do you remember like Barry, like, because he felt like on the field, you look at him running, he was always kind of low when he ran, but he looked like he was 4'10", like, because he just looked short compared to everybody out there. And he was almost a box. His thighs were probably 3 feet wide. It just looked fun the way he was. And you would just think that those would overpower the joints in his legs, but it just didn't happen. There's something about how Barry was built that and just a shout out to the jersey you're wearing. We talk about Golden Tate, how he's been able to avoid injury. You watch how he rolls when he gets tackled. We've talked about, I see a lot of that in Amon-Ra as well, how he knows when to push for that extra couple of yards, and when he dives under a guy or rolls or spins away from the hit, just really aware of the people coming at him and the hits that are potentially going to be delivered. And I think that is not just a business decision. I think that is absolutely a lifelong health decision, and helps them be the great players that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of coordination when it comes to how you fall, how you get hit. You see some guys they might be super fast, super quick, but they can be a little bit clumsy when they fall, when they take hits.
I got a really quick shout out to Don H. He says, I sound like a bag of broken glass when I go up and down stairs, man. He also hit us on the St. Jude, $100, and then he hit $100.31 to get us to the magic centavos. Don H., thank you. Thank you guys for all you do for the kids. And
Thanks,
also,
Don.
Please keep this going. Everyone in here, please share this on all your social media. This is so important. Big Dom, thank you, brother, $100. And Matthew Ratliff with $50. Dr. Jimmy Liao is a fantastic follow on Twitter. Lions on the rise, baby. And definitely follow Dr. Jimmy Liao on Twitter. It's great stuff. And I mean, we look at things all day as just Lions fans, and sometimes you read and you're like, wow, that's really great, and you move on, and it's like we forget to mention. I'm so glad that Jeff brought you up on the show last time and we were able to connect. This is really fantastic, and having this kind of insight and being able to test some of these mental models that roll around on this goofy head of mine is super helpful. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun that you're very well with our ignorance. We appreciate that.
It's great talking to other Lions fans. I mean, growing up in Michigan, you'd think you'd be surrounded by Lions fans growing up, but shockingly, it was few and far between. Most of the kids around me growing up in grade school, high school, even in medical school, they're fans of other teams. It's Steeler fans, Cowboy fans. So being able to have a forum like what you guys do with your podcast and your website, it's just great to be able to interact with other Lions fans.
Absolutely. Well, Doc, let's talk. Let's do some more. This is great. I appreciate your insights, and there's you bring a lot. You know what I mean? And I think it's something that could definitely, add to the overall offering. We have a platform, and I think that's something that you deserve because you've got a lot of great insights. You're a super smart guy, and people are hungry for this kind of information. A lot of people make shit up in their heads, right? And to have somebody with kind of the bona fides to be able to kind of talk through it with and help dumb guys either feel smart or readjust their thinking is a really big benefit.
Well, I appreciate it. And just as a caveat, these are just my opinions, just based on video and just guessing. I have no inside information. So I'm in the same position as everybody else, you guys included. So if anybody has opinions or insights or wants to give their analysis, I am more than welcome to any of that.
That's awesome.
Cool. That's good. Can I ask one quick question before you go? Halapoulivaati Vaitai went from missing a year with the back, then had the knee rolled up on, and now he's resting again with the back. How bad is that?
Long term, this is not good. This is a guy who's been chronically injured the past 3 years. In 2020, he was injured in the entire year with a left foot issue. He played, but he was hobbled the whole year. As you said, he missed the entire last year with what I believe was a nerve impingement injury. Had surgery on that. This year, went down with a knee injury, which I'm suspecting is a PCL sprain, the way he landed on his knee. Then he comes back, and now he's got this mysterious back issue, and he's been in and out of the lineup. So short term, hopefully they can get him back to being a contributor this year, but this is not really a guy you'd really want to look too hard into signing beyond this year or being able to count on beyond this year.
Yeah, that's kind of the sense I've got. Let me ask you something about another guy with a back who feels like a really feel good kind of story, and we hope it stays this way. But Levi Onwuzurike.
Levi?
Yeah. Talk through kind of some of the detail of what he's had.
Yeah.
And the thing that we all, there's so few players that have ever come back from that in the NFL. And a guy that big with back problems to be able to come back and even play as well as he has thus far is stunning to me. Absolutely stunning. Can you talk us through that? And then What do you think? And again, all opinions. You're not giving you're not giving any diagnoses, no medical advice, anything like that. But if you were to try to think about a hypothetical prognosis, what would you think about for him based on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, he had a lumbar fusion surgery. We didn't find this out till just this year when he did. He wrote his own article describing his whole journey. So he was mysteriously hurt for like a year or two, and it was highly questionable whether he was even going to return. Lumbar fusion is not something that NFL players typically come back from because it really restricts their range of motion and their ability to bend their back. And with a defensive lineman who's constantly doing this kind of thing, it was a surprise he was able to come back, and it looks like he's playing fairly solidly. He hasn't made any splash plays yet, but he's made it through this whole season so far. I don't think he's gotten hurt yet or been inactive. Is that
as far as I know? He's been there.
Jeff?
Yeah. It would be nice to see more from him, but the fact that he's made it this far, it's amazing to me because Chris and I both had written him off completely. Like there's no way he's going to come back, and it's very impressive, and it speaks very well of his character that he has tried to come back when it would have been very easy for him to take the medical retirement.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to think about this from like a rehab perspective because he's played this year. He hasn't failed, hasn't had an injury, hasn't re-injured it. It seems to be working for him. So now it's like, okay, he hasn't made the splash plays. But he's been out for a long time. He hasn't played football effectively for 3 years almost. Is this a case of it's taking time for him to truly just get back into football shape? Or do we think this is an injury limitation that might be stopping him from being the Levi that we thought he could be?
I think there's definitely a limitation. I think there's going to be a chronic limitation. I mean, the back is no trifling matter, and he had a serious surgery of his back that is restricting some range of motion there. So there is some limitation there that's going to be chronic. Is that going to affect his long-term potential? Is that going to affect whether we want to keep him long-term? That's harder to say. But I think his ceiling has dropped because of that injury, though.
Fair enough. Boy, oh boy, Dr. Liao, this has been great. The insights have been fantastic. Again, let's connect. Let's talk about some more stuff because this is absolutely fascinating. I think there's a lot we could do, but definitely reach out, Dr. Jimmy Liao, on the Twitter machine or X machine or whatever it is now. It's turned into a little bit of a triple X machine. You just got to do your filters right, but there's a lot more than there used to be.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's my guy.
This is why he fits into the podcast. This is great.
Yeah, I like you guys, man. I like your sense of humor. I'm good with it.
Oh man, that's awesome. Hey, do you ever make it out back to Detroit for any games? Do you do any travel to see the Lions? Or you?
Yeah, I went to the Chiefs game this year and the Green Bay game in Lambeau this year.
Awesome.
So I've been to 2 games, and I'm going to SoFi in a week too. So this is a big travel year for me. But the Chiefs game was fantastic, man. It was. Yeah. I showed up there on Monday, and the whole week I was already seeing tons of Lions fans there during the week leading up to the game. And then game time, of course, all the Lions fans show up super early. So because you're a visiting team, you're going to show up early. So all the Lions fans started packing down right behind the bench, like hour or 2 hours before the game. And I remember seeing Brad Holmes talking to Sheila Ford Hamp down there. He waved his arm out there at this crowd of blue. It was like basically saying, like, can you believe this? Look at this. There was just so many Lions fans there. It was just fantastic. And then coming out there with the win, it was just, yeah, that was just a great night.
That's fantastic. I'll tell you, SoFi, we went to the Rams game there. Have you been to SoFi yet?
No, I have not.
It's the best stadium I've been to. I've heard Jerry World is pretty fantastic. I haven't been there. SoFi is far and away the best stadium I've been to. Have a good time. It's a good time.
Really?
It's one of the ones where you can go as an away fan and be safe and have a good time and enjoy yourself and really just celebrate being a Lions fan and what goes on. So I hope you bring them as much luck as you did in Kansas City. And definitely get together for a beer. If we can get together where we travel to a game, whether it's Detroit or somewhere else, definitely let's find a time. I know week before the Xmas, I'm going to be down in Detroit. I don't know what you look like, but it'd be good to have some celebratory Lions fan hanging out time. So
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
All right, my man. Yeah. Dr. Jimmy Liao, appreciate you coming on. Thank you for helping us support St. Jude and help people find their wallets and drop some money in the tin to keep the research going and helping these families, man. Appreciate you, and I'm certain we'll be talking again soon.
We are very grateful for your insight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great night. All right.
Yeah.
See you.
You too.